Last night, you spent 2 hours deciding what to wear to the party. This morning, it'll take you 2 minutes to list it on Depop and make your money back. Just grab your phone, snap a few photos, and we'll take care of the rest. The sheer dress and platform heels you'll never wear again? There's a birthday girl searching for them right now. Your one and done look is about to pay for your next night out. Or at least the ride home. Your style can make you cash. Start selling on Depop, where taste recognizes taste.
They say you should learn something new every day. Like how you should only drink Jägermeister at 0 degrees Fahrenheit, ice cold. Like those frozen cavemen they find, which makes you wonder, what would a caveman think of Jägermeister? Well, if you served it warm, he'd probably throw it in your face, say, "Unga boonga," and storm off. And nobody wants that. So drink it cold or not at all. Jägermeister. Damn, that's cold. Drink responsibly. Jägermeister liqueur, 35% alcohol by volume. Imported by Mast Jägermeister, U.S., White Plains, New York.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Wrestling Draft.
Hello everybody and welcome back to the Wrestling Draft here on the Wrestling Draft YouTube channel or in the audio realm wherever you get your podcasts. My name is Scott McLeod, welcoming you to the penultimate episode of the season and also my penultimate episode as a host of this show. I know, it's all very dramatic and very emotional, isn't it? But we must power through. We power through, stand and deliver. We're on our way to a stopgap in Canada for Dynasty before we head off to Vegas to go all in on our money and hope that WrestleMania turns out the way we hope it will. Even though it pretty much looks like the season has been decided for a long time. Joining me as always, of course, is David Hockney, my usual co-host. Hello, Dave.
Hi, Scott. Oh, I said just before we started recording, I was in the mood to, beat some folk up like that. And you know me is, I don't usually get angry. I don't usually get, I usually try and see the optimistic side of things, but I was ready to beat somebody up looking at those ticket prices. And then lo and behold, Pepsi Phil cuts the pipe bomb and basically the whole world cheers as a result.
Still a bit of my favorite range to be going to WrestleMania, especially in Vegas. But I'm looking forward to WrestleMania be over just so I don't have to sit through those bloody Vegas adverts anymore or hear that same song over and over again.
At least it's not like Fiend,
No. Also, randomly, they've added Nickelback to they've got a new song out and they've added that to the soundtrack for WrestleMania. If you thought it was maybe 2009 all over again.
I'll shift some seats.
Some butts in the seats.
Was it butts in the seats? Yeah.
And that band telling me about butts and seats was not Tony Schiavone, but it was in fact Gary Morris joining us once again. Hello, Gary.
Hi, Scott. Hi, Dave. It's the third man.
You mean the fourth official?
Well, yes, but also the third man, but maybe slightly more Disco Inferno rather than Hulk Hogan.
Dennis Rodman as opposed to, Hollywood Hogan?
I mean, if I was going to call anyone the Disco Inferno of this draft chat, I would probably say JP. But, yeah, they were happy to have you. You were on earlier in the season, now you're back on again. Good to have you. I definitely listened to that previous episode, so apologies if I ask you any questions that we already heard. But we'll go into our usual top three of the week. We have on 9 point Ethan Page did not walk out of Stand and Deliver as NXT champion, but was in and amongst it both on the pay-per-view and on TV following it. But then we have up to 10 points each. Rhea Ripley, runaway juggernaut for the Jamesons, but we also have Saul Ruka, who, funnily enough, Gary, is on your team, also coming out of Stand and Deliver, the big one over Zarya. 24 points overall she has. As a 10 points this week. How have you guys felt, you and Robert, about Saul Ruka overall this season as a performer?
Yeah, I'd mentioned this to Dave last time I was on, Scott, that Saul Ruka coming off the back of a decent performance in the Rumble I've kind of struggled a little bit with my NXT women's picks throughout this period. Was on Jordan Grace with the hope that she was going to beat JC Jane, then went on Sol Ruka with the hope that she was going to beat JC Jane. Neither of them finally did, but she's still fairly well positioned on NXT, even though not necessarily as champion, and looks as if the feud with Zari is continuing going into NXT Revenge and the build up to Mania. So still a few more points to be had, but not quite the title win in this season that myself and Rob were hoping for.
Mm-hmm. Although speaking of Revenge, Dave, I think it was announced like starting next week. There's a 2-week thing, NXT Revenge. It's got like a week special. I think the week that will be counted as the draft to be in the first week is Ethan Page v Tony D'Angelo. Let's just go to say I don't think that's going to go your way in the end.
You never know. The booking's been a bit crazy as of late, but I mean, maybe it was just to get the title on Tony D before maybe you slide it back over to Ethan Page, perhaps, maybe because you know how well his NXT North American title run went. Maybe they'll do something similar with a second time round with the NXT title, but you never really know until the moment, do you? But it's been a good week for Ethan. He didn't eat the fall in the Fatal 4-Way at Stand and Deliver, and he got an 8-man tag win with all 4 participants against Dark State. So it's been a good result for Ethan Page all around. Maybe not as good as his past seasons, but certainly one to take note of.
Mm-hmm. Looking at Rhea Ripley being there, I mean, it's hardly a surprise really any season to see Rhea Ripley in the top 3 of the week. And I think that 10 points that she scored is part of the reason that the Jamesons are still so highly ranked in the overall table, despite Joe Hendry being the one to take the fall and losing the NXT Championship this week. I'm assuming that's like they wanted to put the belt on Joe, but they weren't always planning to keep him in NXT for too long, so get him called up. So I think that's helped even things out for the Jamesons, even though they're still in second place. But going back to Gary, I can completely understand why you picked Sol given her recent performances. I mean, a few seasons back, she was a double champion, and midway through one of those seasons, one of the belts that she had went from not being counted to suddenly being counted again. So it's just one of those things. You have picks that do great for other people in other seasons, and then you get them, and then bad things tend to happen with them. I mean, I haven't been put off ever taking Tiffany Stratton again, because I picked her in one season. No, she's definitely going to win the Rumble, runner-up. Oh, she's definitely going to win the Chamber. Doesn't. And then, she's definitely going to be US title challenge for the US title. And all mention of that has just gone out the window recently. So, fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, maybe it was my fault. But looking at the table, speaking of me and Tom Brock are at the bottom of the table. 126 points. I don't know how that happened. I mean, I'm hoping something.
Are you seriously losing to No Vibe Nation at the minute?
Only by 1 point. And plus, I think we can definitely turn that around come WrestleMania. We were definitely not winning. I put notion to that a long time ago. Matt Smith and he said No Vibe Nation 127. Then just ahead of them is our guest Gary, or it's alongside Robert Shaw, the people on 131 points. And then we jump up to 143.5 points with Roscoe. We jump again to the West End Wine Lovers at 163.5 points. Then 167.5 points. All these bloody half points is Andy and JP. Then we have the Jamesons on 195 points, inches away from the 200-point barrier. In our chat, even Dan Axel Jameson himself is shocked to see the Jamesons still so highly ranked. But 226 points. The think tank. They've been doing a lot of thinking, and it's done them very well because they are still at the top.
Moxley is the juggernaut of all juggernauts. Like 9 TV wins, non-title, all thanks to these Continental Championship Eliminator matches. But you have to wonder with AEW Dynasty this weekend, is this where he finally drops it to Will Ospreay? A returning Will Ospreay, might I add.
Yes. The title has officially been put on the line. We'll see how that works out. Gary, what are you thinking about this leaderboard, and particularly your place on it? Because not to sound like I'm punching down on you, but you and Robert were towards the bottom of the table, literally at the bottom for quite a few weeks in a row. I mean, you've moved up a little bit, but what are you making of this current table so close to the end?
Yeah, I think the plan always was to be not to be pushing up the daisies, I think, from fairly early on, especially after Drew lost his title. That pretty much paid to our hopes of probably winning this year, to be honest. Damn Cody. But we kind of wanted to see the Jacob Drew program over a title, essentially, and that didn't necessarily happen. Add to that, Tony Storm getting injured. If it's an injury, we think it might be something else, but that's not confirmed. So essentially, that's another person out for us. Julia's done next to nothing really with the US title. So it's just been one of those seasons where on paper it looked decent, but it hasn't quite followed through with anything, sadly. Mania season's always tricky because there's only so many programs, and I think if you manage to get caught out on the outside of that, it's very difficult for non-Mania program people to get much traction.
Yeah, I mean, I can definitely see why you would have chosen Drew. I mean, because Robert had him last season, and Robert was on a hell of a run for most of last season. Like, he had Drew in his team, and shockingly for a lot of people, Drew won the title like midway through that season, and so then choosing him again. I think again it also speaks to the unpredictable nature of this year's road to WrestleMania and the weird twists week by week that they've been making that is really costing a lot of people points. I think one of the biggest casualties so far has been Gary and Robert with Drew losing the title. I mean, you do have Drew and Jacob teaming together at WrestleMania. I don't understand we are facing each other. The two people on your team fighting each other, and that's always a weird one. Which in the final of the season, two people on your team are fighting each other. Because I always get confused as to how the hell the points work out on that one. But at least
they kind of cancel each other out. But I think the trick will be getting the captaincy on the person that's going to win. But at the moment, that's a bit of a 50-50, I think, is whether we keep it on Drew and hope that Drew does it. I think there's always the risk because we know Drew's got a film coming up that they might write him out, given it's an unsanctioned match. So there's certainly been conversations around potentially switching to Jacob and trying to at least get the double pay-per-view points for the captaincy, and that hopefully might be enough to kind of see us through, and then maybe hope for a wee shock in the women's tag match with Bayley and Lyra, which would be lovely, but I doubt it.
But you know what? I like that way of thinking, Gary. You're putting WrestleMania into context here. You're looking at your options, and I think it is going to have to be between Jacob and Drew at this point for your captaincy. I mean, she got the US title defense against Tiffany. No, actually, no, it wasn't a title defense. It was just a regular win. Yeah. Whether or not Tiffy's going to be on the card again to challenge Julia remains to be seen, because the card's looking pretty stacked as it is. But I suppose you can't go wrong with potentially Bayley and Lyra getting the tag team win out the blue. But I think as long as they don't get pinned, that would be a saving grace for you at this stage. That's kind of what helped me with the whole Ethan Page scoring big this week.
And I'm pleased for Bayley because at least she's getting on the show after missing a few big ones recently. It's good for her to get on there.
Yeah, although talking about the women's tag match, it seems like the Bellas positioning on it seems to be a bit up in the air because Nikki Bella's going through medical evaluation at this stage for possibly an injured ankle. So if Nikki's not cleared to compete, keep Scylla on standby for that one. The rumor is that they will be replaced by the Kabuki Warriors. So we might get Asuka and Kairi on the card instead of the Bellas.
And I think especially if Io Sky is not fit either, that might make their mind up for that as well. And do you know what? Even if the Bellas are fit and Io's not fit, it wouldn't massively shock me to see them put another team anyway and just make it a 5-way to at least get the Kabukis on the card. If Io can't go, then... You know
what's crazy is that the two women that went into WrestleMania last year as defending champions, they currently don't have a match for this year's Mania. Like, how mad is that to think about?
Yeah, until last week, it looked like Jey Uso didn't have the match on Mania either.
But he went as a challenger, not as defending champion.
But still, for the guy that won the Rumble and walked away from Mania with the title to not have a match.
They definitely put themselves into a corner with that one.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's all weird what's happening with some of the women going in, because I think at one point they said they want to do Asuka every Kairi, and maybe they'll throw Asuka Io, and they'll throw maybe Kairi in for a triple threat at one point, and then it's weird for you. I mean, this being so close to me, anyone potentially suffering an injury, that'll especially squeaky bum time. Don't want anyone missing out so close to the end. Because there was rumors.
Where's the Andre the Giant Battle Royal? Get that back on the card. In fact, what happened to the women's Battle Royal as well? The one with that trophy that looked like a pair of fallopian tubes.
I still think, though, that there's probably scope for some matches to be added to SmackDown the night before, the kind of not on the card matches, so that there might still be some matches to be had, even though they're not really on the main show. So the likes of Julia and stuff might get featured there, but not on Mania.
Yeah, I think the US title, women's US belt, if that's going to go anywhere, it's going to be on that bloody show. But there was a thing about Liv Morgan undergoing concussion protocol after that big lump on her head that she got after the Stephanie McCare incident. But that's again, she's somebody I really don't need getting hurt. I suppose, and then obviously you've been having to root for the Bellas. And I know Stacey really wanted the Bellas on the team. And I think there was a thing that came out that the Bellas thought they were going to be on TV more than they have been, and they weren't. But if they get pulled, what happened with Nikki is secrets now, they have to get pulled. I mean, how bad are you going to feel, and how much angry are you going to be towards Stacey for this?
You know what? No, I won't be angry, because it just seems to be an injury-plagued season for this one around, and. Yeah, it's just one of those unfortunate things. You can't predict, and you can't book an injury angle to happen unless it's all in the name of kayfabe. But I think best case scenario is Nikki gets cleared, the Bellas go into the tag match, we get Asuka versus Io as a result, and the Bellas walk out of WrestleMania as tag champions. Then we'll know it was a justified pick.
And I think if Io doesn't get her match with Asuka, I think the best you can hope for is a run-in during Rhea's match, because they had Jade attack Io as a part of the angle there, so there's not really much of a space for Io at the minute. I can see, though, Gary, why you would have chose a women's tag team, given that there seems to be a lot of momentum going behind the women's tag division in recent months. But annoyingly for you guys, it seems like the team that you picked have been focused a lot more on singles stuff, and they've got the short end of the stick compared to the Irresistible Forces, compared to Charlotte and Alexa, or even the women in amongst the Judgment Day. You're really focusing on the gauntlet match and the winning the women's title.
Yeah, and I think the way we looked at it was tag teams don't often score mega highly, so we kind of left that quite late for our pick. There wasn't a great deal left on the table really when we chose them. It was a bit of a punt, and listen, we'll get some points out of it. They're going to be on the card. Let's see if it pays off. If it doesn't, then, as I say, I think myself and Robert will be delighted to avoid finishing last, and if we do that, then it's been a success.
They are definitely the dark horse of the four teams in that match, I definitely think, in terms of who's going to win. Going back to the leaderboard here, I just want to point out there are 100 points between bottom, which is me and Tom, and Stephen and Guy, who are at the top. There are 100 points.
Jeez, oh.
So not as competitive in the main league, but Dave, is it any more competitive down in the Listeners' League?
Kind of, yeah. I mean, not as tight as it was last week, but still we've got a hot contest as we go into the last couple of weeks of this season. But I want to take a moment just to laugh at Shane McDermott, who is way down at the bottom of the Listeners' League. He is the only competitor that's not on triple digits. So just to put it into perspective, Jonathan Napier, second from the bottom, has 109 points with the American Draheem, and Shane McDermott is on 66 points. So, and his team name, the McMahon Files, consists of Dominic Mysterio, Finn Balor, Becky Lynch, Jordan Grace, Raquel and Roxanne, and Braun Breaker. So, yeah, I think it pretty much proof is in the pudding. And with Dom and Finn set to face each other at WrestleMania, those points are going to cancel out anyway. And why they haven't put the captaincy on Becky Lynch at this point is beyond me, given that she's the only one getting a title match at Mania this year. But yeah, just a laugh at Shane on that one. Anyway, top 5. This is who we care about. So top 5, 5th place, Anthony Fitzpatrick with main league, didn't complete it, mate, on 180. 4th place, Stacey Love, say their name, on 183.5. 3rd place, Luke Scott with the bumps on 194. Just 2.5 points ahead of Luke is Nikki Presland with Dwayne The Rock Paper Scissors, 196.5. And finally, 9 points ahead. It's a bit of a gap, much like the Contributors League. Lee McAteer, JP's love child, is the only one that has now broken 200 points for the Listeners League. And just to remind everyone of his team consists of Cody Rhodes, Lash Legend, Joe Hendry, Paul Heyman, Tiffany Stratton, and Dark State. Now, obviously, Dark State might not have made as much of an impact this season, only 19 points on their part, but the captaincy on Cody Rhodes for Lee McAteer, with Cody winning the title back off of Drew, was a big turning point for his team. And let's not take anything away from Lash Legend. 35.5 points, just half a point behind Nick Aldis on 36. She is currently 11th overall in top scorers of the season so far. She's scoring more than Cody Rhodes if he didn't have the captaincy applied. So that just puts in perspective on how valuable Lash Legend can be in future seasons. And it's no surprise given her Royal Rumble performance earlier this year.
Look, going back to Shane being at the bottom, I think if you're at the bottom of the Listeners League, not in the main league, but the Listeners League, I think you need to take some time between the next season and just have a really think about your life decisions and see how you can improve upon that, because that is just shocking to be that far down. But yeah, anything like if it's Patrick in the top 5,
maybe rethink your team name as well. We don't want to get cancelled before we even hit the big time.
Well, that's why he's doing so badly. He's been buried down there.
It'd be right up there with unnamed sweep competitor Scott that didn't watch NXT at the weekend and thought someone was someone else. I don't know if you want to tell that story.
Oh yeah. Anthony Fitzpatrick thought Ren Sinclair
was a bloke.
Was a man. I put it down. I still wrote down. It's maybe bad on me as the guy who does the sweeps internally within the podcast, even though they don't affect the show. But like amongst the podcast competitors who do the sweep, I didn't correct him. I just saw that. Went, okay, that's not going to happen. But like, if Birthright wins and Charlotte Dempsey gets someone that's least points for him,
you know what?
I just feel the need to correct him.
He should count himself lucky that Ren Sinclair was undrafted this season as well. In fact, I can't recall if she has been drafted in past seasons before. I know Lola Vice has, but not specifically Ren Sinclair. No,
it doesn't strike me as someone who would have been drafted. But Lee McAteer has been doing very well on literally been at the top for the majority of it. And yeah, like the only person to crack 200 points. That's definitely putting him in good standing going into the last leg of this season. Let's look ahead now. AEW is coming up. Dynasty, the last big AEW show of the season. You had Toni Storm on your team. Also, she's not going to be there. It's interesting, like we've talked about, me and Dave, several times about some of the AEW picks you might want to pick this season. Some people who didn't get picked. Also, the number one person is John Moxley, hands down. That's a big reason for why the Think Tank are doing so well. Any thoughts into why you guys chose Toni Storm as your main AEW pick, or was there ever a point where you guys thought about avoiding AEW altogether?
As you guys know, it's not a show that I ever really watched, but we did want to have some non-WWE content on there just because, as what I was saying earlier about Mania being, if you're on Mania, great, and if you're not, then unless you're Danhausen, you're not really going to get featured, especially given the number of celebrities and non-wrestlers that are getting spots rather than actual people that have been about all year. So we wanted some AEW content. Toni Storm's been a very consistent points gainer in previous years. We wanted to go with a kind of 3-2 women's split. So we went that way. Obviously, we didn't foresee her coming out. And I think, just to quote AEW for this week, she's made the list.
Yeah, definitely made the list. Look, not just Tony Storm, but like looking at your team at the moment and kind of looking back to how you and Robert were putting the team together. Who are there any people who are you would definitely regret putting on the team? And is there anybody now in hindsight, looking at how things have turned out, that you would have probably tried to get instead?
Oh, we absolutely wanted Carmelo. That didn't happen. We wanted Trick. That didn't happen either. So I think either of those would have been much better picks than what Julia turned out to be. But I think, as always, at the start of a season, you have a look around, you see, right, who are the champions, who are in line for title shots that might become champions, who are always on TV and that are likely to at least get appearance points. And I think generally that's a fairly decent strategy for it. We felt everyone we picked were involved in angles or programs that would probably see them through the season, and it just hasn't quite materialised.
It is a lot like that old phrase, hindsight is 2020. But looking at AEW going in, obviously, we mentioned John Moxley earlier on, Dave, about the match for the Continental title against Will Ospreay. I mean, I'm not saying John Moxley losing this match would automatically mean the Think Tank aren't going to win the season, but I'm just saying it is a loss they don't want at this point of the season. The captain pay-per-view title loss, because they can still make the ground up and keep the gap wide enough at WrestleMania if certain results go their way. But it's just one of those things, like, when you're that close and you have created the gap they've created, you want to keep it as wide as possible.
Yeah, and this week is the last chance that they'll have to put a captaincy change on if they want to go with somebody on the WrestleMania card, because after Sunday, there's no changes allowed.
Yeah, it's is it not by the start of Raw on Monday, or at least this Monday is the deadline to make any changes?
Well, if we're being pedantic, then yes, so you have to do it before Raw on the Monday.
Yeah, so anybody on the listeners in the league, listeners are main one. Otherwise, if you want to change your captaincy to anybody, you've got just a few days left. You got by Monday to do it, because the Jamesons, being the main people behind, nipping at the heels of the Think Tank. They have Don Callis, who will be in the corner of the opponents of the Young Bucks, because the Young Bucks are also on their team. They're taking on, as announced on Dynamite, Takeshita and Okada, and also Don Callis will likely be in the corner of the heels there. So Young Bucks win again. It wouldn't close the gap that much, but the Think Tank really want to keep up, because they've been, they've surprised me, and we've talked about it, how they've exceeded all expectations that we had for them at the start of the season. And basically, they can't afford to slow down at this point, so they really need a Young Bucks win.
Yeah, that and the Don Callis appearance. Don Callis has been doing well for appearances. He's one of the top scorers just from appearance points alone. 31 points total, 27 of those TV appearances, and the remaining were pay-per-view appearances. So, yeah, you can't turn away from, Don Callis being on the opposing team and then having their opponents be the tag team. I think that's just sort of ticking all the boxes. But I would actually have the Bucks going over here, because it looks like they've been teasing a bit of a feud between Okada and Takeshita, and it makes me wonder, are they finally going to pull the trigger on it?
Well, I think the setup was, like, Takeshita agreed to team with Okada here as long as he got an international title shot at Double or Nothing. So you could always have them win, act like everything's okay. Oh, it's going to be a friendly competition at Double or Nothing, and then eventually everything kicks off at Double or Nothing with, I assume, Takeshita getting kicked out. But talking about people who have been surprises of the season, someone who's routinely underestimated in terms of drafting each season, Marina Shafir, who's on your team, on 26 points overall. A very rare occasion when she's wrestling on pay-per-view. More specifically, she's wrestling on 0 Hour against Alex Windsor. It's really your only shot at the AEW side of things, because you on AEW.
Marina's been hit or miss this season, I think. 26 points overall. Only one TV win, but the rest of it has been appearances. And I think it just goes to show, if as long as you've got somebody on the Death Riders, you can't go wrong with, getting a few points here and there. They're as frequent as like general manager appearances are on weekly TV. So yeah, it's good to see her in a singles match for a change, and a few extra points in the bank will certainly help.
Yeah. It's amazing we're talking about AEW coming up. Yeah, Don Callis, Mimi Shafir, these are people we're talking about in terms of points. But there's so many bigger names I think we're not talking about. Almost at MJF, I realized oh no, he is picked because he's on Roscoe's team, and I think, it could go either way. I could see them going either way, but I definitely think he's going to get the win over against Kenny Omega. Kenny Omega is someone who I should have been saying, like, we're not talking about him getting points, but we're talking about bloody Mini Shafir and Don Callis. Up to the point we're talking about Harley Cameron and Boris Parker.
Meanwhile, Miss Player Hater, Jamie Hater's the one challenging Tekla for the women's title. It's good to see, Harley Cameron's the one getting drafted, and yet it's Jamie Hater, Player Hater, that's on the card against Tekla.
Yeah, so Roscoe in the middle of the table, MJF I think could help keep them up in the upper end. Now it's weird on TV they've been teasing bloody Willow Nightingale she'll defending it to anybody at any point. Unfortunately for No Vibe Nation, she is not booked to be on Dynasty as of yet. Collision they could announce something because they do love saying here's a full card for a pay-per-view. Here's several more matches you don't need.
Here's three more at the last minute. Yeah,
and 2 hours before. Because how could we possibly watch 0 Hour without Big Boom AJ on it?
They could put another one on the 0 Hour. If it's just Windsor and Shafir so far. I don't see why they couldn't just add another one.
But I'm curious to get your guys' thoughts on this last one, because this is the one I really care about. And this is the one thing I'll be tuning into Dynasty for. FTR versus Cope and Cage.
Ooh,
now,
Cage and Cope.
Shut up. It's one of those things, right? If we're going by booking style, if we're going to keep this going, Cope and Cage won the last one, and then people said, but then FTR only won the belt, so they could drop them back to them. So surely FTR could get their win back. But it's a weird thing. Cope has this weird habit. He did it as Edge during his comeback run, where he gets in defeats with people, he gets the match, he wins the match, he gets attacked after the match. So he can go off and do, because he's only part-time, so he can go off and film something or whatever. And then comes back I'm so angry. I need to get revenge. Why? You came back and attacked them because they attacked you, but you won the match that you had before. So why do you need to wrestle them again? Just so you can beat them again?
And take the tag titles this time.
Yeah, pretty much. It's a lot of these feuds are booked backwards, I think. It happened in WWE, and it's not changed in AEW. As far as I'm concerned, which is part of the reason I believe they could win Coben, that could win the belts. But for all it's holy, I'm just praying that FTR can pull something out of it. The fact it's in Canada also is not filming hill, but again, going by the Lloyd Christmas logic, you're saying there's a chance.
Yeah, it's it's in Canada as well. You've got to bet on the Canadians for this one.
Yeah,
hey, buddy, Jose.
What do you think, Gary?
Yeah, but I'm obviously a long-term. I think I've had Christian several times in my time in the draft, but he doesn't do a great deal now as he's coming towards the tail end of his career. Obviously, we're hearing Edge is going to be retiring later on this calendar year as well. So it's one of those where if they do win the titles, do they keep them for that long? Probably not, but you can't beat that hometown pop. But I don't really think that's something that AEW do as much of as certainly what WWE used to do in terms of the hometown hero. So, yeah, well, that's a 50-50 for me.
Yeah, it's one of the ones we can say, so-and-so definitely going to get points for this thing as much as we want. And you always hope for your own team to do well. But I tell you, I won't be blaming, FTR. I won't be blaming Tony Khan's booking if this doesn't go the way I want it to. You know who I'm going to blame? I'm going to blame Canada.
Oh, God.
We should all blame Canada.
Where's Sheila Breflowski?
But looking ahead, I think we're at that point where we've had work partners, we've had to go out as a team we've had somebody who we can point the blame to if things go wrong. But when I talk to both of you, yeah, you particularly, going into next season now, back to singles, back to the one of the longer seasons, and we've got that transfer window in the middle. How are you? Are you already looking ahead to?
Yeah, a little bit. I think it's one of those where the post-Mania season's always...
singles mindset.
Yeah, the post-Mania season's always quite tricky because it is a little bit of a reset. Plus, you've also got rematch mania that also tends to happen a little bit. So I think it's going to be such a big draft with so many people to be drafted because it's a singles one. So I think this year there was only, 7 teams and 6 picks, so it's like that's not a lot of people to come off the board. So there's probably a lot more scope to be given to probably AEW, given to other shows, maybe the likes of the NXT that maybe aren't looked at quite so much in the Mania season one. Be interesting to see who takes a punt on Danhausen. I think positioning is going to be really important for it, but he's one I think could be quite decent in terms of gaining appearance points, if not necessarily match points.
And vibes.
So he probably does kind of fit around there, but it's a really, really tricky season to call before Mania. So I think I'll wait until what happens in Mania and then try and devise a bit of a strategy. But I think where you're landing in the draft order will make a huge difference, because I think in such a big season, you probably need your round 1 and 2 picks to be big points gainers. And then after that, it's maybe a little bit of a lottery.
Yeah. I think some people do have a sense of kind of like, if it doesn't work out, kind of, it doesn't matter that much with certain picks in that season, because that's the one and only time you can actually, swap your pick if it doesn't quite work out. Dave, what about you? Because you and I have already mentioned, you mentioned last night a minute ago, and we've talked about a few people on the road to WrestleMania that, you look at the points they picked up, and yet if I didn't know nobody picked them, then you think, if this was a single season like it usually is, would this person have been picked, and would someone actually have benefited from those points?
Yeah, there's definitely a lot, as we've seen in recent weeks, where the points are starting to rack up for a lot of undrafted picks. I think Penta has been the key one lately. I think he's going to be pretty high up in the draft order. If he doesn't go after round 3, I'm going to be quite surprised, because he scored 43 points overall, 5th of the season. Intercontinental title defenses left, right, and center. He's got another one at WrestleMania in that 6-person ladder match, which I imagine is going to be great, because you've got a lot of high flyers in that match as it is, and Rusev. And
that one big guy to throw people around and throw them into ladders.
Basically, all I'm saying is don't sleep on the mid-card titles, because they can generate massive points as long as, you've got a face champion who's defending it frequently on a weekly basis, because if you put the captaincy on them, you can score big as a result. But on a separate note, I think you've got to look towards SummerSlam. Like, who's going to get the big wins there? And there's at least 3 in particular that have caught my attention, one of which has been out for a while, but is expected to come back pretty soon. So watch this space, and let's just say, for next season, make sure you've got some big meaty men slapping meat on your team.
Gary's point about, wait after Mania. I mean, Penta will definitely need to see if he keeps the belt after Mania, and to see, but then again, he's consistently booked on Raw. I do next season the one where you don't sleep on AEW or NXT, the way that some people have for this season. Particularly AEW, they'll have Double or Nothing, Forbidden Door, and while we won't have All In will probably be the following season. Given it's right at the end of August. Most of the build up to All In will happen during that season. So you got to think about people who'll be appearing on TV regularly up until that point. And also in NXT as well, there'll be quite a lot of people who I think have proven quite valuable that didn't get picked up, like your Lola Vices and people like maybe your Ren Sinclairs, maybe people like that.
Yeah, I'm going to be keeping a close eye on Kendall Gray. I think it could be she's, I think, next in line on NXT. Whether it comes as early as next season or not,
Yeah,
I don't
good
know.
shout.
But I think she's certainly, especially if they do some call-ups from NXT's women's division to go up a little bit, as I'm probably expecting, probably Jessie Jane will maybe go up, maybe Fallon Henley will maybe go up. So Kendall Gray could be a good sleeper for maybe round 4, round 5.
Maybe all of Fatal Influence will go to the main roster, try and spread the women's division out a little bit.
But anyway, that is everything for this week's episode. We'll be back with the fallout from Dynasty and the final episode of me hosting the show, and also the final episode before WrestleMania. We'll take one final look, try and make any final predictions to see where people will fall in the order of the table, and who will perform best in their attempts to. Who will perform best while losing to the think tank? Because I think
who will stand and deliver, and who gets returned to sender?
Who looks the most impressive second and third place? That's who we're determining, and hopefully it can be a bit more competitive next season. But it's been a good one to talk about with you guys. Gary, thank you for joining us on the show. You're always welcome here.
Pleasure as always.
And David Tony, thank you for always being here.
Yeah, season finale next weekend, so let's get into WrestleMania mode now.
Yes, let's all keep pointing at the signs. We're coming down to the end of the road. We're pulling into Las Vegas. Yes, my last episode next week. It's going to be emotional. Thank you, everybody. We'll be back next week for the finale. Same draft time, same draft channel.
It's tax season, and at LifeLock, we know you're tired of numbers. But here's a big one you need to hear. Billions. That's the amount of money in refunds the IRS has flagged for possible identity fraud. Now here's another big number. 100 million. That's how many data points LifeLock monitors every second. If your identity is stolen, we'll fix it guaranteed. One last big number. Save up to 40% your first year. Visit LifeLock.com/podcast for the threats you can't control. Terms apply.
Crisp, refreshing, and unmistakably tasty. Ice cold Coke Zero Sugar. It's the only drink with real Coca-Cola taste and zero sugar.